Are you thinking about becoming a dive professional? Well, before you take the plunge, pun intended, there are a few things you need to know. A lot of divers dream about turning their passion into a career, but there's more to the job than just spending your days underwater. And in this video, I'll share 5 essential facts that every aspiring dive pro should know before they start their journey, so you know exactly what to expect, whether it's from training costs to just the reality of working in the industry. Let's get into it. Now, most people think that becoming a dive pro means you get paid to go diving all day, and that's only part of the job. In reality, being a dive pro means becoming a teacher, yes, but also a leader and a problem solver as well, both in and out of the water. You'll spend a lot of your time helping others learn, but you also will be keeping them safe and dealing with unexpected situations. For example, let's say you're leading a group dive and you realize that one of your divers is burning through their air way faster than expected. You have to manage their gas supply, make sure they don't panic, and then adjust the dive plan on the spot. You also could have a situation where maybe you have a student who's nervous about mask removal, for example, and your ability to keep them calm and guide them through is what separates a good dive pro from kind of an average or even a bad one. When you're teaching classes, you need to constantly monitor all your divers to make sure they don't wander off or do something unsafe, like panic and bolt for the surface. And you still need to ensure that they're all performing skills that are needed to pass their certification class as well. And while all of that can be a rewarding challenge, there's also the reality of what it actually takes to become a dive pro to discuss as well. Remember that all this stuff's in water, but there's lots of out of water tasks too that you'll be doing, which could be including just hauling tanks for the boat, could be doing filling tanks as well, maintenance on things, and so much more. But let's go back and talk about that cost a little bit more. So if you think that becoming a dive professional is just about taking a few extra courses, then think again. To really go pro, you'll need to invest in the training, yes, but also very likely your own dive gear, possibly more dive gear than what you have already or what you would normally carry, because you want maybe spares for your students or just extra things to help you teach. You also need professional liability insurance, which may or may not be covered through your dive shop that you're working with. And then sometimes you actually have to have travel expenses for the training itself. Your local shop may not have a full IDC or instructor development course, for example. So you might need to travel to another shop, or maybe just travel for the IE, which is the instructor exam that you actually have to do in water and do the written test as well. And then of course, some people actually go to like Caribbean, for example, and do their full Divemaster and instructor and all that stuff 0 to hero. And of course that has a cost as well. Because of all of this, the full cost of becoming a certified instructor can have a pretty wide range, but you can kind of say the average is maybe anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 US, and it kind of depends on location, agency, where you are in your current diving, of course, too. If you already are a rescue diver and you're becoming a dive master and then instructor, maybe you are a dive master, and while that is a professional level, you're working on becoming an instructor. And let's just say that like $3,000 to $10,000 could be just for the instructor level, honestly. But it's not just about the money, it's also a time commitment here as well. You'll need to log a lot of dives. There's minimum dive requirements for all agencies. Depending on the agency, it might be a little bit different. You have to log dives as a certain level, sometimes even, to become an instructor or a dive master. As you're going through Dive Master especially, and even as you start off as an instructor, I'd recommend that you assist other instructors in their classes, right? This helps you gain real world experience before you're ready to lead students on your own. Yes, there's some 0 to hero programs out there, as they call them. I won't name any specifics, but there's some really well-known ones out there, and there's pros and cons of those. You get to dive a lot in a short amount of time, so you get a lot of experience quickly, but at the same time, you're not necessarily diving in loads of environments and having lots of wide ranges of experience, which I think personally makes you a better dive master, dive instructor, etc. Let's just say you invested all that time, that money, but after all of that, you're probably saying to yourself, like, is this even going to be financially worth it after all that? Like, what do I get paid? Well, let's talk about the money. Can you make a good living as a dive pro? Sure. For most people though, I'll be honest, that pay isn't great, Entry-level instructors can usually make what's called a livable wage, right? Emphasis on the air quotes, because it can be pretty debatable depending on where you're living on if that's a livable wage or not. For example, you might need a roommate or two to be able to live on that wage. Now that said, some dive centers actually provide things like, maybe free accommodation. So if you're teaching through there, you have free room and board, maybe even discounted meals at their dive resort or something like that. Unfortunately, if you get those types of perks, those are usually the ones that also will pay you less, because part of your pay is getting the benefit of the free accommodations. Inland dive centers, like the one that I work at, they're usually not hosting classes every single day of the week. It's more of a weekend type thing or something like that, just because there's, good traffic, but less traffic than someone on the coast that's right next to the ocean where people are thinking about diving more often, right? They got charters out all the time. part-time, stuff like that. So with that, the pay could be even lower, and you may want to supplement that by like working in the dive shop full-time. You can become a service tech for gear, for example. You can perform other tasks too, like social media and stuff like that. Some dive pros, they work full-time, and some teach part-time like I do, or they might use it to supplement another career that they have. The important thing is that there's actually ways to level up, and you can become like eventually a course director, for example, or you can work on liveaboards instead. Heck, you could even eventually run your own dive shop. But leveling up like that, there's different layers of pay, I guess, as you get further into the industry. It just depends on how deep you go. But there could even be some more simple things to do, like you can run the social media for your dive center, for example, or if you're great with photography, you could be an underwater photographer and sell photo packages, for example, whether that's like licensing photos using online sites for licensed media, or actually like selling photo packages to the tourists that are on dive trips with you, that type of thing. But overall, like, here's the thing, most people don't become a dive pro to get rich. There's a saying that like, if you want to be a millionaire, start with 2 million and then open a dive shop, right? Like those types of things are out there, and it can be true, I'll be honest. It's not like you're going to constantly lose money if you're diving, but the range can be very different. Your private instructor versus public instructor, or regular instructor, I guess, at a shop, those types of things. And again, personally, I teach part-time and I have a full-time job that I use as my primary income. But most people, again, aren't doing it for the money. They're doing it for the experiences instead. They might be able to explore like these remote dive sites that they wouldn't normally get to see. They could work in exotic locations, connect with passionate divers like from all over the world sometimes. And if you think about it, there's that famous quote that says, the richest people are not the ones that have the most money, but those who have lived the most life experiences. And if you think of it from that perspective, I think a lot of dive pros decide to go pro for the experience instead. Personally, this is a part-time job for me. This is something that I use as an escape from the 9-to-5 job that I have, where I'm stuck at a desk on a computer all day. And sure, I do hope to eventually like retire from the software job that I have and become a full-time instructor instead. And maybe I'll be able to do that in the next 10-15 years. We'll see. It kind of depends on my own life goals and financial goals and things like that. Like everyone else has to make that decision, of course. Becoming a dive pro can actually change your own personal relationship with diving as well. Now, don't get me wrong, if you love diving now, you're probably going to love it just as much later, but there is that chance that you have to ask yourself, will I still love it just as much once it becomes my job? It's not just a hobby anymore, right? It's shifting from hobby to career. And that shift can really change how you see diving. Instead of focusing on your own dives, or, just while you're on the dive, focusing on what you want to do, photos of, nudie brank or something like that, you're instead going to be teaching, guiding, ensuring others have a great experience, not just your own personal experience, right? For me personally, there's definitely a rewarding side to this. Like, I love helping a student take their first breath underwater, or guiding someone on their first reef dive, or bring them out to a shark encounter or something like that. But there's a challenging side as well. For example, when you're teaching the same skills over and over and over again, and you always have some type of difficult student in your class, like almost every single class, there's going to be at least one person that's going to struggle, or maybe is a little bit rude or something like that. Or depending on where you live, you might have to cancel the class, or cancel the boat dive that you're going to be doing because of bad weather. And then you're dealing with that negative feedback from the customers or the students. That can really wear you down over time. What I found is the key is to balance and set time aside for your own diving as well, where this isn't just a job, but you're doing your own fun dives as well. Take that time to explore new sites yourself, maybe even take a specialty course for yourself to continue your own education, and make sure you're still getting in dives that are just for you. Even though it's a demanding job, the lifestyle is what draws most people in, and we should definitely talk about that. Yes, being a dive pro can be physically and mentally demanding, but there's a trade-off. You get to live and work in some of the most incredible places on Earth. At the very least, you get to be underwater more often than the average diver. There are challenges, like you typically work very long hours if you're a full-time instructor. Depending on where you are, you're dealing with sun exposure constantly, just literally out in the sun. If you think Caribbean heat is something that you don't love until you jump in the water, imagine working in that all day, hauling tanks and things like that. You also are going to be physically assisting students with their gear sometimes. If it's like a full service shop that's doing a boat dive, they load and unload your gear, they swap tanks over for you, stuff like that. That's something that happens. And of course, you're also managing those like unpredictable conditions, which can all be a bit exhausting. But in exchange for that, you get to spend your days in the water, you travel to breathtaking locations quite often, and you get to meet people from all walks of life, which is really cool as well. It's important that you find the perfect fit for you too. Not every dive pro path is going to be exactly the same. Some of these examples I'm giving might be someone that works in like a luxury resort, for example, but it could also be that you work on a liveaboard where you're gone and you're only at port maybe one day a week. Someone that's inland like myself, they could be working part-time or just on weekends, and maybe just going to a rock quarry and only occasionally going on trips when the dive shop holds a charter. Or you could be working in a remote area doing some type of like conservation project as well, whether that's coral reef restoration or fish identification things like counting species and stuff like that. There's lots of different roles out there for you. And before you start the journey, there's just a few things you need to know. This video covers some of it, but there's really still a lot more to learn if you really want to make it in the dive industry. If you're serious about becoming a dive professional, especially an instructor, there's more to think about before you take that first step. Watch this video next where I break down the biggest mistakes new dive pros make and how you can avoid them. With that, stay safe, have fun, and let's go diving.